The alert began with a single soft tone, something so ordinary that the technicians in the Imperial Deep Space Station barely reacted at first. Alerts like this happened all the time: dust clouds drifting across sensor lines, stray cargo pods drifting off course, the usual clutter of space. But this tone didn't fade. It grew sharper, brighter, and within seconds the whole room felt different. As if the air itself was waiting for something. One of the technicians leaned forward, staring at his console. He blinked once, then again, as if the numbers might fix themselves if he looked long enough. This can't be right," he whispered. People turned toward him, first annoyed, then confused, as he pushed his chair back and stood. His voice shook a little as he spoke louder. "There's something big on the edge of the system, and it's moving fast." A few officers hurried over, expecting a glitch. They checked the screens themselves, tapping commands, zooming in, running verification. Their expressions slowly shifted from bored to serious to pale and tense. The room became silent except for the low hum of machines. An unidentified warship was crossing into Imperial territory. Not drifting, not wandering, not damaged. Was moving with purpose, heading straight toward the Imperial seat at a speed no known ship in the region could match. News spread through the station like fire. Officers rushed to their posts. Alarms echoed down the halls. The Imperial seat, the heart of their entire civilization, was now the target of a vessel none of them recognized. There were no diplomatic signals, no known transponder codes, no familiar engine signatures. The ship looked like nothing in their designs or archives. It radiated energy readings that made even the senior analysts uneasy. Within minutes, the emergency channel connected directly to the Imperial Palace. The Empress's Strategic Council demanded every detail. Screens in the palace lit up with grainy images of the massive vessel drifting into view. Even though the resolution wasn't clear, the sheer scale of the thing sent a chill through everyone watching. In a quiet corner of the palace briefing room, a lone human observer stood among the Imperial officers. He was there as part of a small diplomatic program, one human assigned to each major Imperial research hub, acting as a cultural and technical bridge. His role was usually simple: answer questions about human customs, offer small insights, keep communication smooth. But now he felt something was wrong. He stepped closer to the main screen, ignoring the sharp looks from a few officers who still didn't fully trust humans. His eyes narrowed as he studied the silhouette of the unknown vessel. The shape wasn't perfectly familiar, but certain angles, certain structural choices, the way the hull was layered, hinted at something he had seen in old engineering documents back on Earth. They had been theoretical designs, concepts never meant to leave the drawing stage. He swallowed, suddenly unsure if speaking up was a good idea. Still, he cleared his throat. The council turned toward him, some curious, others irritated. I might be wrong," he began, choosing his words very carefully. "But parts of this ship look like something humans would build. Or at least something humans once thought about building." The officers frowned. Some exchanged doubtful glances. One of them folded their arms and said, "Humans? Your people are still developing mid-range jump engines. There is no human ship in existence that can travel this fast." He didn't argue. He simply looked back at the screen. "I'm not saying we built this recently. Just the structure feels familiar. That's all." The council didn't take the suggestion seriously, at least not yet. Fear, pride, and doubt mixed together. The idea that humanity, young, underestimated, still often treated as a minor species, could produce something so powerful seemed ridiculous to them. But the human observer kept staring, unable to shake a strange feeling. He couldn't explain it, but something deep inside him whispered that this ship wasn't alien. It wasn't a threat from outside the known maps. It was something else entirely, something forgotten. Meanwhile, panic began spreading across the capital. Messages flooded the network. Families prepared emergency supplies. Shops closed early. Soldiers filled the streets, guiding civilians toward protected zones. Rumors moved faster than officials could correct them. Some believed the ship belonged to an old enemy returning for revenge. Some thought it was a rogue Imperial faction testing an illegal weapon. Others whispered that it was a ghost ship from lost space, carrying something ancient and unstoppable. In reality, no one knew anything. Up in the orbital command center, tactical experts watched as the vessel continued on its straight path toward the Imperial seat. There was no drift, no hesitation, no course correction. It simply pushed forward, as if it already knew exactly where it wanted to go. The Imperial fleet received immediate orders to prepare for deployment. Hundreds of pilots strapped into their seats. Engines warmed. Shields activated. Every ship in range aligned itself for a possible intercept. Yet even as the fleet mobilized, the human observer couldn't shake the sense that attacking the mysterious warship would be a terrible mistake. He didn't know how he knew this, only that the vessel didn't move like something hostile. It moved like something following instructions, something executing a mission that had been written long ago. Still, no one in the Empire wanted to wait and see. The Empress herself appeared on the main communication channel. Her voice was calm, but her eyes revealed the strain she felt. "We cannot assume peaceful intent from something we do not understand," she said firmly. "Prepare defensive action, but do not attack unless there is no other choice." It was a careful order, but fear has a way of twisting even careful decisions. The Imperial analysts continued digging through every database they had, comparing the warship's energy patterns and its hull design to every known species. Hours passed, yet nothing matched. Every time they tried to trace its origins, they hit a dead end. But one thing was undeniable. The vessel's power output was higher than anything the Empire possessed. If it was a weapon, it was a weapon beyond imagination. If it was a scout, then whatever civilization had built, it was far more advanced than the Empire had ever guessed. The human observer felt increasingly restless. He stepped back from the screens, thinking hard. He remembered old conversations with Earth engineers, old articles about experimental propulsion tests, old legends about classified missions that were buried under ocean archives and forgotten. Humans were known for many things: stubbornness, curiosity, and the strange habit of building things far earlier than they admitted publicly. Could humanity have launched something this massive long ago? Something built as an experiment, then lost? The idea sounded impossible. But the ship on the screen existed, and nothing in the galaxy could explain it. While the Council debated and the fleet formed its defensive wall, the warship suddenly adjusted its angle. It wasn't a sharp turn, not aggressive, not threatening, but a smooth redirection. A straight line toward the Imperial capital. That moment changed everything. The alarms in the palace reached maximum volume. Officers scrambled for their posts. The Empress demanded real-time visuals. The fleet leader ordered all squadrons into high alert formation. The city below entered lockdown. The human observer felt his stomach tighten. The way the ship turned didn't feel like an attack. It felt like recognition, like a programmed response. The vessel hadn't chosen a target, it had chosen a destination. He stepped forward again, trying to make the Council listen, but no one had time to pay attention. Everyone was too busy preparing for whatever was about to happen. In the middle of this rising chaos, one thing became clear. The ship wasn't stopping, and the Empire was rapidly running out of time. The Imperial fleet had trained for decades, maybe centuries, to handle every kind of threat: raiders, pirates, border conflicts, even the rare cases when a hostile species tried to test their strength. But nothing in their experience prepared them for a silent warship that refused to answer any call. showed no sign of fear, and kept moving in a straight line toward the heart of their empire. When the order came down, the fleet didn't hesitate. Thousands of crew members rushed through the halls of their ships, putting on suits, securing equipment, checking weapons. Everyone understood the same thing. If this vessel reached the Imperial seat without being stopped, the consequences could be beyond imagination. Inside the main command ship, officers stood around a massive hollow table where the unknown warship floated in the center of a glowing map. Its presence alone made them uneasy. It didn't drift like normal ships. It didn't shake from engine power. It simply glided through space like it owned the path ahead. Fleet commanders studied it from every angle. They zoomed in, scanned it, looked at energy readings, tried to predict its next move. None of it helped. Every reading came back strange. Every detail raised. More questions. The silence of the warship made it worse. Ships always talked, even if only with simple automated signals. They sent status updates, identification beacons, or at least some kind of acknowledgement when an Empire fleet hailed them. But this ship was like a giant ghost alive, active and completely silent. The human observer, who had just arrived aboard the command ship as a liaison, felt the tension around him. Officers walked around with hurried steps. Commands echoed through the comms. Lights flashed red. Pilots were already in their fighters, ready to launch. Despite everything, the human observer kept staring at the display, feeling more uncomfortable by the minute. He recognized certain design features that others didn't. The smooth hull layering, the arrangement of engines, the strange mix of old and advanced technology. It was too familiar. He didn't want to say it aloud yet, but deep inside, he believed this ship had some human connection. He tried to warn a group of officers again. If this ship is automated, it might not respond to Imperial signals at all. Some old human systems only recognize certain command types. One of the officers shot him an annoyed look. "You are suggesting a human ship could outrun our fleets and break through our borders without effort?" The human hesitated, then said softly, "I'm suggesting that humanity has built things in the past that not many people know about." The officer didn't believe him. The Empire still saw humans as a developing species. Useful, adaptable, clever, but not dangerous, not powerful. The idea that humans could create something so advanced simply didn't fit their belief. The fleet launched anyway. From the command ship's window, thousands of vessels lit up the darkness of space. Fighters spread into wide formations. Heavy cruisers moved ahead as shields shimmered around them. The scene looked like a great metal wave rising to defend the Empire. Their instructions were clear. Intercept the warship at a safe distance. Attempt communication one last time, and if it still refused to respond, force it to stop. No one wanted to fire on it first, but no one wanted to let it reach the Imperial seat either. As the Empire's armada formed a wall, the unknown ship approached without slowing. It didn't raise weapons. It didn't activate shields. It didn't change course. It behaved almost like the fleet wasn't there. The closer it got, the more uneasy everyone felt. The human observer leaned closer to the displays. "This is wrong," he whispered. "If it's hostile, why isn't it preparing anything? If it's peaceful, why not respond? This thing is moving like it's following a last known instruction." His words barely reached the officers around him. Most of them were too focused on the battle plans. The fleet began sending stronger hails. "Unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted Imperial space. Respond immediately." Silence. "Unidentified vessel. Change your course at once." Silence again. Inside the command ship, the tension grew heavier. Officers exchanged worried glances. Protocol required the next step: defensive posturing. Several ships locked their weapons, though they didn't fire. They switched to tighter formations. The atmosphere in the command bridge felt like a storm building. The human observer stepped forward again, trying one more time. If you threaten it, it might activate defenses. If those defenses are anything like what I think they are, we don't want that. An older officer frowned. You think it will attack if we prepare to defend ourselves? No, the human said, shaking his head. I think it might react automatically. It may not know the difference. That made a few officers pause. They didn't want to admit they were listening, but his words lingered in their minds. The warship reached the first line of defense. Fighters circled it, scanning every inch. They reported the same eerie result. No signs of life, no weapon locks, no active targeting systems. But inside the hull, enormous power slept like a coiled dragon. Some of the pilots felt a chill as they flew around it. The ship didn't move aggressively, but its massive presence made them feel like insects buzzing around, something ancient and powerful. The fleet commander decided to escalate the warning. A bright flare fired across the warship's path, a non-lethal warning shot used for centuries. A clear message: stop or change course. The warship didn't move. Not even slightly. It simply continued toward the sea. Imperial seat, as if nothing existed around it. The silence of the unknown vessel began to feel more threatening than any attack. If it had fired once, at least the Empire would know what to expect. But its complete lack of reaction suggested something more disturbing, that the warship wasn't ignoring them. It didn't even notice them. Inside the command ship, analysts dug deeper into powered subsystems. One of them suddenly gasped. The energy readings are rising. Everyone turned. The unknown warship's internal power was increasing slowly, steadily, as if it sensed obstacles ahead and was preparing to push through. It wasn't a weapon charge, not exactly. More like someone waking up a massive engine that had slept for years. The human observer swallowed hard. This was the moment he had feared. It's reacting. Maybe not consciously, but it's reacting. The fleet commander's voice grew sharp. We must be ready to defend the Empire. The human stepped forward again. Then don't fire. Firing might be the worst thing we can do. The commander stared at him, uncertain. The idea of not fighting a ship heading directly for the Imperial seat went against every instinct he had. Another officer argued, if we don't stop it now, it will reach the capital in hours. The human had no answer for that. He simply looked at the ship on the screen, feeling a strange weight settle in his chest. He didn't know exactly what this vessel was, but he sensed the truth. Whatever humanity had sent into deep space long ago was never meant to be confronted like this. And if the Empire pushed too hard, the consequences could be devastating. The warship pushed deeper into the defensive lines without changing its behavior. Imperial ships surrounded it at every angle. Some pilots whispered prayers. Others tried to stay calm as they watched the massive silent machine drift through their formations like a shadow. Finally, the Imperial commander gave the next order. Prepare the stasis nets. If the vessel does not change course within the next sequence, we will attempt a forced hold. The human observer felt his throat tighten. A stasis net wasn't a weapon, but it wasn't harmless either. It forced a ship to stop by wrapping it in a field that interfered with its engines. Against normal vessels, it was safe. Against something like this, he whispered, please don't do this. But the Empire had no other choice. As the stasis ships moved forward, glowing fields forming around their projectors. The unknown warship suddenly altered its angle again, just slightly, but enough to startle every analyst watching. It wasn't avoiding the Empire. It wasn't responding to commands. It wasn't acting hostile. It was simply realigning its path perfectly toward the Imperial seat. The fleet fell silent. The human observer felt his heart drop. The Empire thought they were intercepting the threat, but the warship had never cared about them. It only cared about its destination. And if they didn't understand why soon, the entire Imperial seat could be in danger. The Imperial Command Center felt heavier than ever as the unknown warship pushed through the last defensive line. No one dared fire, not because they didn't want to, but because something about the vessel didn't feel like a normal threat. It didn't respond to warnings. It didn't react to the fleet. It simply moved with steady purpose, like a giant machine following a command written long before anyone in the Empire was even born. Inside the command deck, the human observer stood quietly, trying to make sense of the growing sense of familiarity spreading through his mind. He watched the sensor updates, listened to the worried voices, and felt a pressure behind his ribs that refused to ease. The more he saw of the ship, the more certain he became that this wasn't just any foreign vessel. It was something human, not modern human. Something old, something from a time when humanity experimented with ideas most people today didn't even know existed. He knew the Empire would laugh at the thought. Humans were seen as a young species with developing technology, clever but not dangerous. They weren't supposed to have ships like this, silent, unstoppable, massive beyond reason. But the universe didn't follow what people believed. Sometimes it followed what people forgot. The analysts continued to dig through the data streaming from the warship's surface. Most of them were frustrated. Every time they tried to match the ship's material, engineering style, energy patterns, or hull design to any known species, they found nothing. Dozens of species, hundreds of ship classifications, thousands of designs, none matched. Then someone on the analytical deck suddenly froze. "I have a partial match," the analyst said softly. The room turned silent. Every officer turned toward them. The air suddenly still. Even the hum of machines felt quieter. "What kind of match?" the commander asked, voice tense. The analyst swallowed. "It's extremely old. The signature resembles a propulsion experiment run by a minor species several decades ago." The commander frowned. "Which species?" The analyst hesitated. "The humans." Every Imperial officer reacted at once. Some looked confused. Some shook their heads. Many looked annoyed, as if the possibility offended them. The commander asked sharply, "Are you certain?" "No, not fully," the analyst replied quickly. "It's only a partial match. The energy signature is far stronger than anything humans could build. But there are similarities, too many to ignore." The officers began murmuring among themselves. The human observer heard every word: disbelief, irritation, dismissal. Impossible. Humans don't have that level of technology. They're smart, yes, but this is too advanced. Maybe the readings are corrupted. No human ship has ever reached this region before. The human observer stepped forward slowly. "I need to see the readings." The commander hesitated. Normally, humans weren't allowed direct access to restricted data. But this situation was far from normal, and time was slipping away. With a short nod, the data was transferred to a nearby console. The human's eyes scanned the numbers, the wave patterns, the engine cycles. These were not exact matches, but they were too close to human-made systems to be random. He remembered old stories from his engineering mentors on Earth, stories about grand experiments that were abandoned after a few test launches. Machines built to explore deep space without needing a crew. Prototypes made to endure harsh environments, large enough to survive anything. Some prototypes worked too well. Some were shut down. Some disappeared, lost to the dark. The human felt his chest tighten. These readings, they match an old human project. Something humanity never talked about publicly. The commander stared at him. "Explain." He took a deep breath. Decades ago, humans built a series of unmanned deep-range vessels. Secret ones. They weren't meant for travel inside normal space. They were meant to go far, far beyond the boundaries, scanning anything they found. The room went quiet again. He continued, some of these vessels had autonomous decision systems. They were told to search, map, avoid danger, and come back when they found what they needed. But the project was canceled. Some prototypes vanished. We assumed they were destroyed or lost. The commander's face darkened. You are suggesting that this thing is one of those? I'm suggesting it might be, the human replied carefully. But if it really is a human prototype, then we have a bigger problem. The officers leaned closer. Even the skeptical ones were paying full attention now. What problem? Someone asked. The instructions, the human said softly. Those prototypes were given very strict programming. If they became damaged or lost or confused, they would return to the nearest recognized center of government. The room grew colder. The commander whispered, nearest center of government? You don't mean? Yes, the human said. It's heading to your Imperial seat because it thinks it's coming home. No one spoke. It was as if the entire command deck forgot how to breathe. The Empire had assumed the warship was hostile or foreign. They had prepared for a battle, for an invasion, for a threat. But if the human was right, the ship wasn't attacking them at all. It was simply confused. It was following old instructions, written decades ago by engineers who never imagined the Empire even existed. The commander broke the silence first. If it is following human instructions, why will it not stop? Why not respond? The human looked at the screen again. The warship glowed with internal energy, engines humming like ancient beasts waking from hibernation. Because those prototypes didn't communicate with outside systems. Their programming was old, strict, and very limited. If its navigation core is damaged or corrupted, it won't understand your signals. The commander frowned. Then how do we stop it? The human hesitated before answering. You can't, not from out here. The commander tensed. What do you mean? He took a slow breath. The only way to stop it is to board it. Someone needs to manually override the navigation. Those prototypes had internal command cores that listened only to human authorization. The officers looked horrified. You're saying we must enter that thing? The Empire cannot allow that, another argued. It could be deadly. The human nodded. I know. But if you try to force it to stop from the outside, it might activate defensive systems. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. One of them whispered, defensive systems strong enough to destroy a fleet? Yes, the human said quietly. That single word seemed to shake the entire room. The warship continued moving across the map, cutting through the last buffer zone. Time was running out. The Imperial seat was directly in its path. The officer in charge of civilian protection spoke up. If it reaches the capital, the results could be catastrophic. It won't attack, the human insisted. It isn't designed for that. But if it crashes, if it malfunctions near the capital, the damage could still be enormous. The commander clenched his jaw. So our choices are limited. We cannot destroy it. We cannot stop it from out here. And we cannot risk letting it reach the Imperial seat. He turned to the human. You are the only one who can operate its systems? I don't know for sure, the human said honestly. But I am certain humans have the best chance. It might recognize my commands, or at least not see me as a threat. The room fell silent again. The choice was clear and terrifying. Finally, the commander looked straight at him. Then we have only one path. You must board it. Those words hung in the air like a final bell. The human felt fear rush through him, not because he didn't want to go, but because he knew what these prototypes were capable of. They were built tough, built heavy, built to endure the unimaginable. Getting inside would not be easy. Moving through it would be worse. And reaching the core would be nearly impossible, But if he didn't try, the warship would reach the Imperial seat, and then the Empire would face a disaster that humanity never meant to cause. He took a long breath, steadying himself. "I'll do it," he said. No one cheered. No one relaxed. The task ahead was too dangerous for hope. But for the first time since the warship appeared, the Empire had a plan, and it depended entirely on a single human walking into a forgotten machine from humanity's past, hoping it remembered who built it. The human stood inside the Imperial hangar, staring at the small shuttle that would take him to the massive warship drifting toward the capital. The shuttle didn't look impressive, just a small craft with 2 engines, a cramped cockpit, and enough space for one person. But today it felt heavier than any war machine in the fleet. It represented a risk no one wanted, a mission nobody else could take. Imperial engineers hurried around him, making last-minute adjustments. They weren't fixing anything serious. They were just nervous. Everyone understood how dangerous the situation was. No one said it out loud, but the truth was clear. The shuttle might not come back. It might vanish inside the strange vessel, or worse, be destroyed before reaching it. The human didn't show his fear. His hands were cold, but his face stayed calm. He wasn't a trained soldier, not someone used to dangerous missions. He was a liaison, someone who mostly attended meetings, shared knowledge, and explained human ideas to the Empire. But right now, none of that mattered. The warship ahead wasn't listening to anything except old human programming, and the Empire's entire future depended on him getting inside its heart. The Imperial commander approached him. The commander's voice was steady, but his eyes revealed worry. "We are ready. Are you sure about this?" The human nodded. "There's no other way. Once you enter that ship, we cannot protect you," the commander warned. "If it activates internal defenses, you will be alone." "I know," the human said softly. "But if we wait any longer, your capital will be in danger." The commander didn't argue. He simply gave a slow nod, stepped back, and let the human climb into the shuttle. Inside, the human strapped himself into the pilot seat. The engines hummed as the cockpit lights turned on by one. It felt strangely peaceful, almost like the shuttle was welcoming him. He closed the canopy, and the view outside narrowed to nothing but the hangar around him and the massive dark shape of the alien-looking warship in the distance. A voice came through the comms. "Shuttle control to pilot. You are clear for launch." He took a breath, pushed the controls forward, and the shuttle lifted into the air. Then it shot out of the hangar and into open space. The unknown warship filled his view like a floating mountain. It didn't glow with bright lights like Imperial vessels. Instead, it seemed built from deep layers of metal and strange dark alloys. Every surface looked old but powerful, untouched by time. It didn't look dead or damaged. It looked asleep, and he was flying straight toward it. Imperial fighters stayed far back, keeping a safe distance. The Empire didn't want to provoke the warship any further. Every ship held its breath. No one dared move too close. If the warship perceived them as a threat, it might react in ways no one could predict. But the small shuttle moved alone, slipping through the silent space like a single drop of water, touching a vast ocean. As the shuttle approached the warship, a low rumble vibrated through the cockpit. Not a threat, more like a recognition. The human's fingers tightened on the controls. "Come on. If you're human-made, let me in." The warship suddenly emitted a faint pulse, almost too soft to notice. Imperial sensors picked it up at once, and the command center panicked. "The vessel is activating something." But the human understood. He whispered, "It's scanning me." The shuttle continued forward. Its navigation system flickered, then stabilized, as if some external force was helping guide it. Something inside the warship was adjusting its course, just a little to let the shuttle approach. a small hatch along its massive hull. The hatch opened. The human felt chills run across his skin. He didn't know if the ship opened the hatch because it recognized him, or simply because shuttle matched some forgotten human code. Either way, this was his chance. He eased the shuttle forward and entered the dark opening. The hatch slowly closed behind him, plunging everything into silence. Inside the warship, the shuttle landed on a small metallic platform. Strange lights flickered on, weak and pale, like old machines waking after years of sleep. The air looked dusty, but not broken. The human unstrapped himself, grabbed a small pack, and stepped out. The metal beneath his boots vibrated gently. Something deep inside the ship was alive, beating like a heart. The atmosphere wasn't breathable, so he wore a helmet, but he could feel the air wasn't completely dead. The ship still maintained some environmental functions. He took slow steps through a narrow corridor. The walls stretched high, curved like a spine. Every sound echoed. Each footstep felt loud. He kept reminding himself that the ship wasn't his enemy. It was simply confused, following a program from long ago. But the deeper he went, the more he understood how dangerous the ship could be. The metal walls were thick enough to survive star explosions. The internal structure felt more like a fortress than a vessel. And every now and then, a faint hum passed through the floors, reminding him that the ship's power core was far from empty. He reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths. A small light flickered on above one passage, glowing a dull blue. He knew enough old human engineering quirks to recognize the hint. Blue meant navigation. He followed the blue path dot as he walked. Small drones suddenly activated along the walls. They floated toward him in a slow, uncertain movement. The human froze, fearing they might attack. But the drones stopped a few meters away and scanned him with soft beams of light. Then, in a strange, almost hesitant way, they moved aside. They recognized him. His heart thumped with relief. At least part of the ship still understood its original creators. But the journey was far from over. The path grew more complex as he moved through wider halls. Some sections were damaged, maybe from meteors, maybe from time. Sparks flickered from broken cables. Old maintenance bots lay scattered on the floor like abandoned toys. Then he reached a sealed door. This one was larger, reinforced, with glowing lines running through it. It was the entrance to the central control chamber. He placed his hand on the old security panel. Nothing happened. He tried again, pressing harder. Still nothing. He closed his eyes, remembering old human systems. These prototypes used layered biometric IDs. Only specific commands worked. He needed to think like the engineers who built it. Simple, direct, old-fashioned. He spoke slowly. Human override request. Navigation core access. For a moment, nothing changed, and the door lights blinked. A low chime echoed. The heavy door slid open. He stepped into a vast circular chamber filled with lights. Screens frozen in old data loops, and a massive central pillar where the navigation core was housed. The core pulsed with soft orange light. It looked calm, but he knew one wrong touch could trigger defensive systems. He approached the console and connected a small device he carried, an old model tool, compatible with ancient human encryption. The console flickered weakly. It projected a message in a language no Imperial officer could read. He understood it immediately. Return protocol active. He swallowed. I know, but you're heading toward the wrong place. He typed in old human commands, slow and careful, trying not to trigger any warnings. The ship hesitated. The lights dimmed. The engines shifted, humming in deeper tones. It was resisting, not out of hostility, but out of loyalty to its mission. It's okay, he whispered. I'm here now. Stand down. The console pulsed. Then the navigation core gave a soft chime. The entire ship relaxed. Engines powered down. Energy levels dropped. Movement halted. Outside. The Imperial fleet watched in shock as the giant warship finally stopped just short of its path toward the capital. No battle, no explosion. Just silence. The human leaned against the pillar, breathing hard. His body trembled not from fear, but from the weight lifting off his shoulders. He had done it. He had stopped a forgotten human machine from causing a disaster. They, Empire, didn't know it yet. But in that quiet chamber, far from the eyes of the fleet, a single human had saved millions. And the warship, now fully dormant, seemed almost peaceful, as if relieved that someone had finally come home. When the great warship finally powered down above the Imperial seat, it felt as if the entire world released the breath it had been holding. For hours, everyone across the capital had watched the huge shape hanging in the sky, glowing with silent energy. Some believed it would fire at any moment. Others thought it was waiting for a signal to destroy everything. But after the human liaison managed to enter the ship and shut down its systems, the danger faded like a storm passing over a quiet village. People still trembled, but they were alive. That was the important part. No one really understood how close they had come to total disaster. Only the liaison knew what kind of power was locked inside that ancient craft. When he walked out of the ship, tired and covered in dust from the old corridors, he didn't feel like a hero. He felt more like someone who had opened a door he shouldn't have, only to find something far bigger behind it. The Empire's guards surrounded him right away and led him to the Empress. She had been waiting in the command chamber since the emergency began, refusing to leave the seat even when her advisors begged her. The guards stepped aside, and she looked at the human with a strange mix of relief, curiosity, and worry. She didn't know whether to thank him or question him first. He stood still, quietly, trying to gather his thoughts. He wasn't used to standing in such a grand room with so many important figures watching him. He wasn't even a high-ranking officer back home. He was just someone who studied old human technology and came to the Empire as part of a routine exchange program. He never expected to be the only person able to stop a ship capable of cutting through entire fleets. The Empress finally spoke, her voice steady even though the night had been full of fear. She asked him what the warship truly was. He hesitated, not because he wanted to hide anything, but because the truth was heavier than he expected. When he finally answered, the entire chamber fell silent. He explained that the ship was a forgotten prototype, built long before humans made peaceful contact with any other civilization. Back then, humanity was exploring deeper parts of space, building machines that could survive alone for centuries. They didn't know who or what they might encounter, so they prepared for the worst. The ship, he said, carried tools and power designed for survival in unknown territory. Power so strong that even the Empire's best vessels would barely last seconds against it. Some council members looked shaken. Others stared at the floor, thinking about how fast they had ordered their fleet to intercept the ship earlier. If they had opened fire, the warship's defense systems would have reacted automatically. The Empire might not have survived the counterattack. The Empress listened without interrupting him. Then she asked the most important question of all. Why did humanity build such a thing? And why did they hide it? The liaison explained that humanity had gone through a phase of extreme preparation once, long before they learned that most civilizations wanted peace rather than conflict. Humans had created weapons not because they wanted war, but because they feared being alone in a huge galaxy. They thought strength was the only way to avoid danger. But as time passed, humanity changed. They learned that the universe didn't need another empire built on fear. They retired their strongest weapons and chose cooperation instead. The warship drifting above them was one of those leftover creations, lost in deep exploration and forgotten by its makers. It had no intention to attack the Empire. It had simply followed old orders and returned to the nearest seat of leadership it detected. To the ship, the Imperial seat looked like the political center of the region. So it came home to report. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment after he finished explaining. It was clear that everyone in the room was thinking the same thing. Humanity had never shown such technology to anyone. They always acted like a young species still learning its place. But if this forgotten ship represented what humans could do centuries ago, then what were they truly capable of now? The Empress looked at the liaison closely. She didn't feel threatened, but she felt a heavy shift inside her mind. The Empire had always believed humans were talented but simple, friendly but predictable. Now she realized they had been watching only the surface. Humans had deeper layers, hidden experiences, old scars, and old strengths they didn't talk about. She didn't know whether she should fear that or respect it. Maybe both. Instead of reacting with suspicion, she chose the wiser path. She thanked the liaison for saving countless lives. She also asked him to help the Empire understand the warship's systems so they could safely move it into orbit rather than let it hover above the city. He agreed, though inside he felt a little uneasy. The ship wasn't dangerous anymore, but walking through its empty halls again made him uneasy. It felt like walking through the past, touching a part of human history that had been buried on purpose. In the following days, teams of Imperial engineers worked with the liaison to stabilize the ship. They were amazed by its design. Some parts were so advanced that their scanners couldn't read them. Other parts looked simple, like old human engineering, but performed far better than expected. The ship's eye was only half awake, confused after centuries of drifting. It followed commands, but it behaved like something ancient and tired. The engineers treated it with caution, almost like a sleeping giant dot across the Empire. People discussed the event everywhere. Some were frightened. Some were curious. Many wondered if more human ships like this were still drifting somewhere in the darkness. The Empress made sure to calm the citizens with clear public messages. She explained that the ship was not a threat and that it was now secured. But she did not reveal everything she had learned. Some truths were too heavy to share widely. For the human liaison, life changed overnight. People whispered when he walked through the halls. Officials who barely noticed him before now asked for his opinions. He didn't enjoy the sudden attention. He had never wanted to stand out. He only wished to understand old human technology and help improve relations between species. But now everyone saw him as the person who had saved the Empire. Some even believed he had secret knowledge that he hadn't shared. That wasn't true, but rumors grow quickly, and no one can stop them once they start. One evening, the Empress invited him for a quiet conversation away from crowds and officials. She asked him what humanity truly believed about the galaxy. He explained that humans learned long ago that strength meant nothing if it wasn't used carefully. Humanity wanted peace, exploration, and friendship, not control. They didn't want to dominate anyone. They wanted to survive together. The Empress appreciated his honesty. She admitted that the Empire had misjudged humans. They admired human creativity and resilience, but they didn't realize how deep those qualities went. Knowing that humanity once had the power to destroy entire fleets and chose not to, made her respect them more, not less. She understood that real strength is choosing not to use it unless absolutely necessary. The warship, once a threat, became a reminder of humility. It reminded the Empire that they were not the only powerful civilization. More importantly, it reminded them that they should never assume they fully understood anyone, especially not humans. As weeks passed, the warship was slowly dismantled and studied under close supervision. Many parts couldn't be touched or moved yet. Some systems were too unstable. The liaison carefully helped them avoid dangerous sections. In time, the Empire hoped to preserve the ship as a historical object, a symbol of cooperation rather than fear. Meanwhile, the liaison prepared to return home. He knew his life would be different after this. People would ask questions. Leaders would want reports. Researchers would want his first-hand accounts. But he was ready. The incident had changed him too. He felt a deeper respect for humanity's past and a stronger belief in its future. On the day he left, the Empress met him personally at the spaceport. She thanked him again, not as a ruler meeting a foreign guest, but as a person speaking to another person who had done something extraordinary. She told him the Empire would never forget what he did, and she promised that the Empire would treat humanity with greater understanding from now on. As his shuttle rose into the sky, he looked down at the Imperial seat one last time. It shimmered in the sunlight, peaceful again. The warship floated safely in orbit now, silent, no longer a danger. The galaxy had changed because of it, even if most people didn't yet realize how much and across the stars. A new understanding formed quietly between civilizations. Humans were far more capable than they admitted. Humans were far more prepared than they revealed. And humans were far more important than anyone had realized. The Empire would remember that lesson for a long, long time.